Hey guys, we are here very late, but we are here. Welcome to Real Triad Reviews. I'm Mr. Snidbits, and to my left you have Black Girl Marvel and Marvelite 20, and we are continuing for week 2 of the Great Tony Debate. Is Tony Stark a hero, or is he not?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, yes he is. Yes he is, she says. So we're here for that. We're here to put down this argument and see how it goes. I think maybe for the sake of arguing, I'm going to check our stream, make sure everything's going good. But otherwise, how are you guys doing this week?
Doing great. I'm gonna go ahead and just come in there while she's yawning. But yeah, we're doing all right. It has been a good weekend, and I hope everybody's gonna have a happy holiday weekend just to enjoy family and friends.
I agree.
I'm extremely tired.
Extremely
That's
tired.
I
That's
did
fair.
a lot. Friday, I played baseball for 2 hours. Saturday, I walked around the Detroit Zoo for 4 hours. So my body is like, leave me alone. Okay.
All right. I get it. I get it. I respect it. Ahoy, Captain Salty Dog. Welcome, welcome. We haven't even started the debate yet, so you're on time. Tonight's movies. Let's talk about tonight's movies. I got the poster wall this week, and it's working, and we can actually talk about the movies we're going to talk about. We've got Iron Man 3, so we're in phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so Iron Man 3, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Captain America Civil War are the 3 movies we're reviewing / debating tonight. Of course, next month, is it next month or is it the month after? I think it's the month after, July, we will be reviewing Black Widow. Exactly.
July 9 is when Black Widow comes out.
Right. And then, of course, and something that Marvelite mentioned on his promo for the show, pardon me, was that we are also going to be reviewing Loki when it comes available next month. So part of what we'll be doing is stepping in on every episode and talking about that. So please make sure you're caught up on that as we go. And then we're going to be adding in some other elements. This is going to become a little bit more of a pop culture related show, but still very much movie centric. But we may dip off into some comic books, some television, obviously with Loki, and then maybe some video games, other things. So it'll be fun. But let's hop right into it. Lala, what is your take on Iron Man 3 as a film?
3 is my favorite Iron Man. So I know that's like taboo to say in the world because a billion people didn't like Iron Man 3, which I don't understand why. I feel like it was a natural progression for Tony, especially with the movies in between, like Avengers being in between that and all that kind of stuff. So like Iron Man 3 was one of my favorites. I suffer from mental health. They showed his PTSD in a very, very relatable way. And I think that was the issue for a lot of people. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think a lot of people were like, they felt like they might have been slapped in the face with it, and it wasn't so many like explosions and blow up and all the kind of stuff that they were expecting. I guess from an Iron Man film, I guess they didn't want it to be that much heart in a film, and they didn't want that. But I enjoyed it. I liked the turn. I liked the Mandarin being not the Mandarin because it's one of those Easter eggs that pays off now because Shang-Chi is coming out. So like that movie might reference this movie in some way. Like, and somebody told me, I don't know, was it this group? No, there was another group. They say I give Marvel a lot of credit, and I probably do, but I also feel like they have a lot of things at least planned out, and if not, they have ideas in which they want to go, because I don't think anything in these films are just there because oopsie daisy. I just really don't. And Iron Man 3 was a good turn for Tony because it kept him in the same character, but it also made him grow as well. But that's my thoughts. I have a whole bunch of thoughts, but
we like your thoughts. So. We like your thoughts. Tony, what do you got? How do you feel about Iron Man 3?
So it was an interesting, it was kind of a love-hate relationship when I first watched the film. In fact, if you think about it, phase 2 did something, now we've been within 10, we had over 10 years of Marvel movies. But we just had the big Avengers event that happened in 2012, and of course Iron Man 3 followed directly after that. And so what happened for me was I went into it hoping for the best, but then realizing this was the first film that Jon Favreau did not direct. And as I'm watching the film, and the first thing that happens in the film is Happy gets injured, I got really nervous because I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna kill off Happy. And as Iron Man progressed, like I'm like, okay, this is fine. I was kind of glad not to see Avengers in it, but there was like references to what happened. In fact, I think it was Happy that called them his super friends,
Right.
which was a hilarious little nod to DC at that point. And you have this much more introspective story for Tony Stark. It was great, and then the ending kind of made me extremely nervous because we didn't know if we were going to have Age of Ultron the way that we thought we were going to have Avengers 2. We didn't know there was going to be Infinity War and Endgame and all of this stuff that was going on. And so the ending of Iron Man 3 for me terrified me because I really liked and I identified, you know, Tony Stark was my guy in the whole universe, and it really made me feel like he was giving up and he was over. And at the same time that this film was coming out, they had never really guaranteed him on with the contract for more films, and so they were in negotiations. So it could have very easily been the last film that Robert Downey Jr. was in that mindset at that time. And so, you know, that's the worst part about being a Marvel fan is a lot of us do the research for these films and like leading up to them, like of what's going on with the contracts. And so you kind of like hear what's happening with like negotiations, and then all of a sudden Iron Man takes out the arc reactor and he's blown up all of his suits and he's walking away from his home, and you're like, are we going to ever see him again? And it really made you think he wasn't coming back until that end. He's like, well, I am Iron Man, but does that mean that he just came to the conclusion that he doesn't need the suit? He is it without the suit. And so it was a good film. And honestly, when the Mandarin twist happened, I thought this can't be how it's going to end. That this can't be the Mandarin. Like, what's going to happen? And then you start thinking, okay, well, the 10 rings existed in Iron Man 1. And so what does the Mandarin think about this guy posing as the Mandarin?
Right.
And so it was cool. And I liked it. It wasn't my favorite film. I actually liked Iron Man 2 better than I liked this film.
You don't hear that often.
um yeah, I know, right? But ultimately, I mean, it was still a good film. And I think if you really think back on what your mindset was when these films came out, Iron Man 3, Thor Dark World, and Captain America Winter Soldier, kind of like you went into them nervous because you didn't know if the characters were going to come out of the films.
Not only did you not know if they were going to come out of the films, you didn't know if they planned on ending them in those films or what the crossovers were going to be, or if they were going to continue this three film concept for all the characters. And then when they started doing like one-off characters like Ant-Man and Doctor Strange, and I'm like, there's no sequels for those yet. That's weird. It got weird all the way through the middle of phase 2. I agree with you. It was very, very odd. My feelings on Iron Man 3 are very similar to Tony's. I did enjoy the film, but I have a really big hang up with any film, not just MCU films, that have a big trick ending that doesn't feel like it's placed. So like if the movie is a Fight Club-esque type film and the trick ending is like the whole point, okay, that's fine. I can rewatch those kinds of movies and enjoy. But there wasn't enough to bite into with a film like this for there to be this like trick ending. It's literally just ha ha ha. And then every time I've watched it after that, I'm like, aha, at the beginning credits. I already know the big reveal. And then I'm just doing a character study, which is great. And I agree with Lala on the character study. I completely related Iron Man for the first time in this film. I was like, oh, dude's got anxiety. I've got anxiety. I would jump into my suit and feel that too. And when he goes through the panic attack, I'm like, oh, wow, this is ridiculous. Wait, so nobody's body said, baby says, what does trick ending me though? The banner thing? Mean.
It was the part in the film where you thought that Trevor Slattery was the Mandarin and he's this horrible character, and you found actually he's an actor. And it's like the idea that the film makes you think one thing, and then all of a sudden there's like this twist that everything that you thought up to that point was wrong.
Right.
and they just made it really comical in Iron Man 3.
And it's fine, but when you go back and watch it, you're watching Guy Pearce the whole time, and you're like, all right, so he's the puppet the whole time, but there's not enough. Again, there's not enough for me to chew on. It's obvious he's the bad guy because they introduce him in the beginning of the film. Like, he's the unknown. He has to be the bad guy. That's the whole point of these films. They're not 10 layers deep. They're 2 or 3 layers deep, which is great.
I also feel like there could be a bad guy that's leading a bad guy. You know what I mean? There could be. It's like that's Thanos' whole thing. He's the main bad guy, but Loki's his puppet, and all these other people are his puppets. So like in this film, it wasn't like a weird thing for them to have like this guy is the puppet, but then this guy is the Mandarin, and then Guy Pearce is like doing his bidding supposedly, and then they switch it around on you, and you see this the other way around. Mm-hmm. That I didn't have an issue with that, but I think if you go and you watch it for the first time, it just hits different than you watching it another time because you know what's coming, right? So it's like to take that idea of going into it and being like, every time I watch it, I just know that this is going to happen. Like, of course, you already watched it, so you have to. I feel like that's when you have to look at it with a different set of eyes.
I hear that.
It's coming.
I do.
But like, what else I get from this?
And I respect that.
At the time, it was a shakeup that everybody was like, "Whoa." They didn't see coming. I
agree. But it is the only one in the entire MCU like that. And so it kind of sticks out as this odd duck film that's trying to be like a mystery in a way, or like an M. Night Shyamalan, it's a twist, at the end, which is fine. But when I rewatch movies like that, there's so much meat in them. If you're going to watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like I said, Fight Club, The Matrix even, there's enough in there that when you know the twist, you could still unravel it and examine it as you go. But with Iron Man 3, it was more just like, okay, I'm just riding along with Tony. This is great, and I'm having a good time. But the ride along kind of, I don't know, they did that a few times. I love Shane Black, don't get me wrong. That's who directed this film. That's who helped write this film. I think he's fantastic for just like a simple blockbuster movie guy. He did the new Predators movie, the new one, the one where they come to Earth. And then he has also done a few other great things. He was in Predators. Like, I like the guy, don't get me wrong. He did Nice Guys, which is like my favorite buddy comedy like ever. But that's kind of his note. And if you know his other work, Iron Man 3 is just like the MCU version of his films, which is fine. But I kind of expected more in that sense. And I'm not trying to knock Shane Black, but that's how I feel about the film.
I don't know. I feel like the draw is Tony, and the whole Mandarin twist is just because I believe it's just something that they had. That's why I feel like it's not a lot of meat. When I think the meat is Tony, and this is just like the whole Mandarin thing might just be like a little appetizer, to just get the blood boiling. But I think the whole meat is Tony.
And again,
but I love No Baby's trick ending. The fact that this is like a dream sequence movie.
Yeah.
Actually, that's like spot on to me. That's like perfection, actually.
So it actually didn't even happen. This isn't how he met what's his name from the cave?
Jensen,
thank you. It's not how he met Jensen. It's just how he remembers meeting him, because he's actually been in a drunken stupor so long that night is just, it's a full haze, and we don't really know if that's how it happened. I don't know. I can buy that with Tony. Speaking of Tony, greetings, Joker. Welcome. Speaking of Tony Stark, though, I do want to talk about his character in this movie because he absolutely. Is she okay?
Yeah.
Checking on my daughter. Hold on. She's crying pretty darn hard. Sounds like she's okay.
Definitely check on the daughter, man.
Gotta do that. I'm sorry. That's it. When I heard her crying like that, I had to check. I think she's okay though. Okay, so my thing. Okay, I thank you for that. He did a good job narrating the film. I agree, but I want to talk about the character, because the transition from Phase 1 to Phase 2 for Tony Stark, and what this whole couple of weeks is about, is a debate about Tony Stark's heroism, right? And does he rise to the level of hero? And I'm going to say that during these 3 films, I started to feel like my thesis got really backed up, especially starting in Iron Man 3. A lot of what he does is still self-oriented, and don't get me wrong, human beings have to be self-oriented in order to survive. It's built into our makeup. It's how we move. We can't take care of somebody else if we can't take care of ourselves first. So I do understand there's that aspect of it. but there are moments in the way he treats Pepper. There are moments in the way that even he takes these drastic measures to get rid of all of his suits that to me speak to somebody who doesn't think and worry about consequences and do noble acts, but just is reactionary, right? He's just reacting to everything that happens to him. And that's good. Again, good people can still have that happen to them, but I don't know if they're going to rise to the level of Captain America, who is kind of my litmus test for hero in the MCU. That being said, I didn't get as much meat out of this particular movie as the next two, so I'll let you guys tell me what you think about Tony and his kind of hero approach in Iron Man 3.
Go ahead, Lala. You go first.
I said it first. I said you go first.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Your audio cut out. I think that was,
Oh,
okay. So I'll go ahead. I'll do it. So basically, what was interesting is really with character development for Tony Stark, you have the events of Avengers. You have this wormhole in space that is obviously effective, and we'll see it a little bit more in Age of Ultron, where it's all he thinks about. And he even touches on that in like Infinity War when he's talking to Thanos himself. He's like, you've been messing with me for all this time. Um, and you and without trying to go into it I think it's not to not note that when in Infinity War, when he hears the name Thanos for the first time, Tony finally is able to put a finger on what he's been struggling with. He knows what the big bad is. It was always this potential of, okay, Loki brought this in. There was other things in space. What else is out there that's trying to destroy our home? And then at the same time, like, we almost weren't enough. The group of heroes almost didn't make it, and and I think this is the point where, like last week we were talking about how Tony Stark deems himself a hero, but he wasn't. Whereas like at like the Stark Expo Center in Iron Man 2, or in like when he would go to the gala and like schmooze with people, when he's at that bar with Rhodey and the kid comes up to have him sign the picture and he immediately sees it, he's friendly with them, but he's not basking in everybody's attention. He's struggling within himself and what's going on, and he's really kind of trying to avoid, and he even at this point he's secluding himself from other people. Happy hasn't seen him for a while. He's let Pepper completely run Stark Industries. He's constantly building suits to try to make up for any type of event or struggle that comes out. Just the fact of all of the suits that he builds, the Igor suit, the Silver Centurion, the the Starburst. I mean, you go through all of these, the Heartbreaker, and all these other suits. Each of them had a purpose for why they were made to help for a specific situation, because he was trying to think, if anything ever happens, what can I do to help fix that problem. And so he's in this thing of trying to prevent things from happening, or having the suits or the abilities to handle any situation, because he doesn't know what's happening next. And then at the same time, he's definitely upset about Happy. And I think the one reactionary thing that he does in this whole film that bothered me was the fact that he gives the Mandarin his address, and he opens himself up for that attack with the helicopters. And so
that is not an isolated event. His hubris goes through the next two films in the exact same way. We'll get to it, but that's the first of many grievances in which he just gets cocky. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but you have Tony just, he's trying to find the answers, and again, like I said before, he doesn't have someone to base what he's able to do. Um, let me say it this way: he doesn't have somebody they can actually look as a role model. We know Captain America Steve Rogers is off with Shield right now, and he's doing clandestine work. He's still trying to figure out where he fits into this whole world. And yes, he's not perfect. Yes, he's known for being in the spotlight. Yes, he's got an unlimited arsenal of money and or technology that he creates. But he's trying to do it to help prevent problems. And even though he does things in the wrong direction, he's still trying to help fix those things. But we do see him having to deal with mistakes of his past. And I think what you have to realize is Tony is yes, he's dealing with mistakes of his past, but this is pre-cave. The pre-cave Tony is a completely different person than post-cave, and he's trying to go against his behavior and demeanor up even through these films.
What do you mean pre-cave? Iron Man 3 takes
When
place
he
primarily post-cave.
right, but when you're talking about like all of the mistakes, those were
Oh, I see what
those
you're
were
saying.
based
Okay,
off
sorry.
of things that happened pre-cave.
I misheard you there. I
Yes.
apologize. Thank you. Sorry. Lala?
That's okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna touch back on Avengers for a minute. So there's a scene in Avengers where Coulson dies, and Captain America says to Tony very nonchalantly, if you really think about that scene and you go back, he goes, "You've never lost a soldier before?" And Tony kind of snaps and he goes, "We are not soldiers." To me, that identifies his whole character. Because you have somebody like Captain America he grew up in a different time. Which, I mean, honestly, ain't that different from them, but he grew up in a different time. And he grew up in a military where people died. But it was like he was built for it, right?
Mhm.
Tony was not built for this. Tony is a privileged kid. He got thrust into a world in which he had to figure out how to take some control over. And then you cut to Iron Man 3, where he's just, dealing with his own mental health. He's giving away everything because he wants to focus on the threats that other people can't. Right? Nobody else, you have the Justin Hammers of the world trying to copy his suit, but not to protect the world, but to one up Tony Stark. Whereas Tony Stark is trying to literally put a suit of armor around the world. So in Iron Man 3, I feel like he is taking that step into becoming the hero that I know he is. Simply because he is not only trying to right his own wrongs, but he is trying to right any wrongs that could possibly happen. And sometimes when you try to jump into the future, or you try to and we'll talk about that in Age of Ultron, where you try to touch things that you have no idea over, some bad stuff can happen, but also some good can happen as well. We've seen that throughout these movies, especially with Tony. So you take a human who has all this past trauma, and that goes back to his parents dying, to being kidnapped, to being essentially kind of tortured a little bit in a cave, to come out, to be betrayed by his best friend, then to have to go up against aliens. You take that person and then you hospitalize the one person that's been his friend since he could possibly remember. I can see where the hubris comes in. Because it's one of those things where I remember getting into an argument with a girl in middle school, and she got into a fight with my friend and not with me. And to me, that's kind of like Iron Man 3. Even though Happy is happy, he thinks he's something more special than what he is. You essentially hurt my friend. If you want to hurt somebody, come hurt me. Here's my address. I understand the hubris. I don't think it was a thing where he was trying to show that he's bigger or better. It was one of those things where it's if you want to hurt me, I'm here. Come find me.
I know. He had instant regret right away.
Yeah, he did. Because I feel like that was just grief talking. People do some stupid stuff when they're grieving. Right? And Tony's been grieving since he's been a child, and nobody has taught him how to work through that grief.
Oh, I'll agree with that. I will totally agree with that.
He spent money. He did all these things. He did everything he can to avoid this grief, right? And so that trickles into him being an adult. Some things we don't learn as we get older. And so in Iron Man 3, he does everything he can to essentially kind of take back that hubris that he had in the beginning. Somebody talks about him having being MacGyver and stuff, and I actually enjoy seeing him use household items to fight, because it showed that he is Iron Man without the suit, right? Mm-hmm. The suit is just a bigger part of him, but he is essentially Iron Man without the suit.
Well, we know that from the Mark 1. He built that in a cave.
But I feel like this hits it different. This hits it in a different way, right? Because not only is he trying to get himself out of the cave in the first one, but in this one, it's like it's more at stake now. Like the stakes have been risen, and now you can see what he can do, right? With some stuff that he's thinking about in his own head, not bits and pieces from like a cave that he's just, let me get this missile, let me get these, but something that he's actually like, okay, I don't have my suit, so what can I do? Okay, let me get this stapler, let me get this stapler, like let me get this gun, let me get this
No, yeah.
nail gun.
I hear you, especially since everything in the cave was military, so he had rockets, he had iron, or not iron, but he had steel to build with. But Walmart isn't going to give him those things.
Exactly, to take a Christmas ornament and make a bomb, essentially.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like just the ingenuity in Tony himself is just. It was nice to see him kind of stripped down in a way, but also he's mentally stripped down in this movie. And that to me, that's my favorite thing about this.
Oh, he's so stripped down, he's not even in his suit most of the time.
He's not, and I think that's telling as well. I think the suit is like not only armor, but it's also like it covers him up, right? Right. And this one, he's open.
So I actually wanted to touch. I wanted to touch on that. I'm sorry, Lala. There's a slight delay with you, so I can't tell when to find those moments. So I apologize. I think it's between your audio and video, so that's what's throwing me off because I'm watching you, and then it's anyway. So I wanted to make this comment last week and I didn't, but I did make it to my wife the other day because I think it's really kind of appropriate. There is more character development for the Iron Man suit throughout these 22 films or 21 films than there are for half of the MCU characters. Iron Man's suit has a better story arc than Hulk. It has a better story arc than all of them, because not only does it develop and get characteristics, like it acts like a thing in Iron Man 3, which starts to creep me out, but then it also develops into, nanotechnology, and it becomes his shield and his, but like it's wild how far that suit has come. Not only that, but it's had more than one robot in it. So, it went from being Jarvis to Friday, and then he's got others lingering. I'm sorry, I just had to get out there. It's an important thing to talk about. Random. Sorry.
I kind of missed all that. I'm sorry.
Well, the two of the chips that had AI in there, one of them was Jocasta, which of course is supposed to be the Bride of Ultron, and then the other one that it's kind of like more hidden there is more of an Easter egg was Tadashi from Tadashi Hamada with Big Hero 6.
That would be awesome.
It's been dope. Yes, the voice.
It would have been. Okay, so we have 1 hour and we have 2 real thick films to get through. So I say we kind of wrap things up for Iron Man 3, since, again, the meat of the argument, it's building, but I don't think it's there yet. He did make Friday after him and Pepper had a rough patch. That's weird. Anyway, so moving on to Age of Ultron, let's first rate Iron Man 3 as a film. And again, we'll use our standard, what we would rate it now and what our 12-year-old selves would rate it then. I'll go first this time. Iron Man 3. I'd give it a 6. Mostly because it's hard for me to go back and do rewatching. I do enjoy the film. I do have fun with some of the parts. I love Iron Patriot and all the aspects of the political nature of it, which is not something you get in other films as much. Like we get to see the president. So there are aspects I like, but the trick ending that is obvious every time you watch it, and then coming off of Avengers, like Tony was saying, I kind of wanted more out of it, I guess. 12-year-old me, 9, probably would have loved every moment of it, because Tony, there's tons of suits, and Igor made me think, oh, we're going to get Hulkbuster. So, of course, yeah, that's what at first I was like, is that? No, it's not. It's not big enough. So, 6 and a 9. Lala, what do you have?
I think adult me and 12-year-old me would be too far off. Adult me gives this a solid 8, because anything has room to grow. I don't think it's the best movie of all time. But I feel like it's a solid 8.5. I'll give it 8. 12-year-old me will probably just give it an 8, because she would enjoy the mental health aspect of it, but she would really enjoy like the fight at the end. and Pepper kind of being like a badass for like once in the MCU. So yeah.
What about you, Tony? Sorry, I was reading what Captain Salty Dog had to say there.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'm actually gonna stick with you with this one, Snippets. I would definitely have given it. I would say a 6. It's not the strongest entry into the MCU. I struggled a lot with it. It put me through a lot of emotions. I actually came out of this movie feeling worried about what was going to happen with the future of Marvel after this. And there were a lot of parts that I liked. I love the interaction between him and Harley. I'm thinking at that point, I'm like, okay, you know, we need this kid either to be Iron Lad or we need a Peter Parker to come in here and have him interact with a kid because it just felt right with him with the back and forth. Um, I liked that. I would so I definitely say a 6. It's I will rewatch it. I watch it a lot. In fact, I was just watching before we got on. And as a kid, a 12-year-old, I probably would have given this more like an 8 or 9. Just because it has enough action, it had a good storyline. I mean, let's face it. When I was 12 years old, most of the comic book movies were crap. So you know, with the exception of a few. So it's kind of nice to have, you know, another entry into the MCU as a kid to be able to watch it. So that's me.
I do like how Marvel does a good job of bringing a lot of kids into the films so that the kids can relate to the kids in the films and feel like they're a part of it all rather than just a bunch of adults all the time.
And I felt like this was
the
Scooby Doo version of the MCU. Like it felt like a Scooby Doo movie.
I can totally agree. So now we're going to move on to Age of Ultron here. I'll bring up the poster wall again since it's actually working this week. And we're back to what we're watching this week, Iron Man 3, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Civil War, Captain America, and then next 2 months from now, Black Widow. But moving into Age of Ultron, directed by none other than that guy we won't need to mention any further, and then a bunch of wonderful people otherwise. This is the second iteration of the Avengers, and I'd say without me giving my opinion right away, this is just widely thought of as probably one of the worst MCU films as well as the worst of the Avengers films, kind of broadly. That's not my opinion, that's just what people in general have to say about it from what I've heard and read. Personally, I was excited about this film. At the time, Joss Whedon was, you know, top of my list of people to go see films about or with. And so when I watched this, I was ecstatic. And for me, it strangely hit all the notes. I was excited beginning to end on this film because I knew it was the best we were going to get out of it. And I knew we weren't going to get the characters we were expecting to get for something like this. If you don't read the comics, that means Hank Pym was supposed to build Ultron, not Tony Stark. And that's a whole nother weird storyline that would have led the MCU in a very strange way. That being said, I'd say that it feels like a sequel to Avengers, which is weird because it's several movies later and the characters have grown. But it does feel like you could walk out of one film right into the next without having any needed to watch any of the other films. And I think that's important with these bigger team group ups. So as a film, I enjoyed it. Lala, how do you feel about Age of Ultron?
I was going on record and say that there isn't any MCU film that I don't like. I take that back. I'll rephrase it. There's not an MCU film that I don't like. I like pieces of every film. I'm very impartial to Thor Ragnarok. That film just really threw me for a loop. But I pretty much like all MCU films. And I can always, so I feel like my judgment going into those are always like, okay, a little more clear than most people's because people are very heavy on the comic book and if it doesn't line up with their comic book needs, and I'm not saying people like us three in this, but it's like if they don't line up with their comic book needs, a lot of people just shut down any movie without actually looking at it like cinematically. For me, Age of Ultron was I will say this, I had higher hopes because Joss Whedon did Avengers and I felt like he did that film well. So I feel like a lot of the Whedonisms, I'll call them, in this film, some hit very well, some didn't. Overall, I think Age of Ultron was a good film. It gave us two new characters that we kind of knew of, but not in the MCU type of format. So I was excited to see where Wanda and Quicksilver would end up. We all kind of know where Wanda ends up. We know where Quicksilver ends up. But
Here, let me put the spoiler alert up.
I would hope not, but I guess so. You can. But for me, Age of Ultron showed what this team could be. And I think it's funny how the lineup of these movies are going. We're doing Iron Man 3. For me, Avengers and Civil War are so next to each other that it's like you see them together and then you see them apart. You see them break apart. So like they're like right behind each other in our little lineup. But you saw what this team could be. Like right in the opening like sequence, you saw how well they gelled, how well like each had like a strength or a weakness, how the team up between Cap and Iron Man was I mean Cap and Thor was a very throwback to like an Iron Man where Avengers where he hit the shield with the hammer and they saw what the power could do. And so like for me in Age of Ultron, it was just a great a culmination of all of them kind of coming together and vibing. And then we have like the party scene and them kind of like talking and building those relationships. It was a very relationship-y type of film for me. All these different people from different mind frames, different times, essentially coming together. And it didn't matter who was super and wasn't until it was necessary, until it was needed, until the Mind Stone kind of created Ultron in a sense. Even though everybody likes to blame Tony, nobody puts blame on Banner, but I enjoyed Age of Ultron.
I'll blame them both, but we can get into that. Tony, what do you got for Tony? I'm sorry, what do you got for Age of Ultron?
Okay, so first thing I want to say is anytime you have a group movie, I have always found that there's always this trope with the sequel that just bothers me, where there's been some off-screen falling out, everyone's disconnected, and then there's some big event that eventually brings everyone back together, and then they team up near the end of the movie. So basically, you went through the whole first film to get this group together, and then all of a sudden you have to have another event that gets the group together, and it doesn't just start from the beginning. And the thing that I loved about Age of Ultron was the group was together at the beginning, and not only were they together, but they were gelled so well. They had the Sundown Protocol with Hulk. You find out later on that there's the Veronica protocol for the Hulk as well, where Bruce and Tony came together with the Hulkbuster. And I love the fact that they called it Veronica, kind of referencing Archie's love interest between Betsy and with Betsy, or Betty with Betsy, Betsy Ross, and you have Betty and Veronica, and Veronica's the other girlfriend. But like you just have all of them. I mean, the Quinjet is set up. I mean, you've got and you find out later in Ragnarok that like Thor's code name is Point Break, and you have like all of these little things that they've just been working together really well. And you've got the Avengers Tower that's built, and you have just this whole world of stuff that's going on that you just missed off screen, that you're just starting from at 60 miles an hour at the beginning of the film. It had a lot of great cinematic moments. I honestly, I'm one of those guys where I first watched it, I loved how much there was. There's the Wakanda reference. You've got Ulysses Claw. You've got you've got you bring Vision in. You've got the idea of Ragnarok being referenced and all this other stuff, which on a second watch kind of muddled things up. My biggest problems with the film was the Banner and Romanoff romance type thing. It was completely unnecessary. It doesn't explain the whole what's happened. We know that Thunderbolt Ross is in this universe still. Incredible Hulk was part of the MCU. They never explain where Betsy is at this point. You have this love interest between Banner and Natasha, which never picks up anywhere else, except for like an awkward glance in Infinity War. And then I feel like they redeemed the whole farm scene in Endgame with the whole reason why Hawkeye is Ronin. Um, but I really feel like that was just more of a waste of time. They needed some type of vehicle, and I know um, Whedon said that there was supposed to be more to it, and then of course Marvel nixed it, and of course Whedon did whine a lot about this film. In fact, he got off Twitter because of Age of Ultron because he was tired of people hating on him. But
Well,
we're talking
they
about
were
a film that
they were calling him an anti-feminist at the time because he was doing things like prima nocta and having Banner stick his face in Black Widow's breasts and things that
Right.
were a little past this time. Go back to the 70s for that stuff.
yeah, yeah. And you have I lost what I
It's
was
done
gonna
it
say.
worse.
No, it could have been. It could have been. But I think that's what he was complaining about. And we all at the time were like, well, whatever, it's Joss Whedon. And then now we're all like, oh, it's Joss Whedon.
Oh yeah.
I do want to step in on the Banner Romanoff relationship. I actually have the perfect reason why it's in there, and it can't not be in there because the MCU won't work without it. There is very little love interest in the MCU. There's not a ton of it. You got Tony and Pepper, and you got Hallie Atwell, or not Hallie, but you got Captain America and his dame, if you will. But then Peggy,
Hey,
thank
what
you.
year?
Hey, I was trying to be very Captain America, very 40s. So anyway, so you've got that, but then you don't really have much else in the way of love interests. Even Peter's, like with MJ, but that's Sony anyway. So my point is, so you needed some love interest. Something's got to give, right? You got to have a little of it. And if you don't have this little bit of love interest, which does spark a little in original Avengers with their meeting and her bringing him, Bruce in. You don't get the reason Bruce has to leave the planet. He didn't want to turn into Hulk. He was forced into turning into Hulk by Scarlet Witch, destroys destroys Johannesburg, South Africa, and it totally wrecks his mind, right? So at this point, he's like, I gotta leave. He even says it to her. He's like, I gotta leave, Nat. I gotta get off this planet. Where on this planet can I go? And then what does she do the next time they see each other? Right after he rescues her, he says, he's the knight, the white knight coming in to rescue her. She pushes his ass for the other guy. That's why he leaves. He had to leave. So like without their relationship, that moment can't happen. He can't leave. No Ragnarok. And I hate to say it, I thought that was the dumbest reason to get Hulk off planet, but is the only reason Hulk leaves.
But I mean, just to chime in, their relationship, I thoroughly enjoyed that relationship because I feel like it's real for the most part. Like you date your coworker, or you find this person who has been killing people since she was probably born. Find somebody that doesn't like to kill people, but sometimes never has a choice, and you build a connection with that person. He has a hard time connecting to people. She has a hard time connecting to people, and I feel like that was, to me, I enjoyed that, like, opposites attract type of thing. But when you get down really to it, for me, they weren't really opposites. They were very more similar than most of the people on the team, and I think that's why they connected. And I was a little upset that they didn't kind of expand more on that relationship, but trying times and bigger things were happening where, in hindsight, their relationship is minuscule compared to what was happening. Mm-hmm. Somewhere else, but you can see that there has been love, because if you go to like Endgame, you can see that there was love there when she died. Like, it really affected him, even though I would have liked to see how Banner felt about it, but him and Hulk seems to be very affected by that. But I enjoyed their relationship because some stuff doesn't have to be a Peggy and Cap type of thing that spans the entire universe of these movies, but just a glimpse of something that could have been. I enjoyed it.
They even say that. They're like, oh, we missed our window. They even mention it in the film. They're like, no, this could have been, but it wasn't because of timing. Who doesn't like the Hulkbuster scene? Like that should elevate this movie to a pretty high level, I think, just for the action. It has some of the best action in all of the MCU. Even I put the Hulkbuster scene right up there with the Endgame action. Like, it's solid. Yeah. So I get really thrown when people just thrash. My brother-in-law thrashes on this movie. He hates, like, despises this movie. He thinks it's the worst outside of the MCU. He just thinks it's a piece of trash. It's like, well, okay. And it's
Yeah, I
not.
wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that feel that way.
Yeah, I don't think it's
for
the
sure.
strongest Avengers film, but I don't think it's trash.
Right.
Yeah, me too.
I think I agree with
Yeah,
you guys.
I agree.
I think we agree kind of on the film in general that it's fun. It's got some great notes. It's got some iffy parts. Pacing is a little tricky in spots, but it's also a film that probably should have been two. And we should have probably seen some groundwork for Ultron in Iron Man 3, honestly, just to make sure that it made a little more sense. But that's just me. You didn't like the Hulkbuster suit?
Yeah, nobody's baby. I have agreed with a lot of what you've been saying in the chat. I cannot agree to that at all. The Hulkbuster suit is legit. It is the best. It is better than the one that they used in Infinity War, which I thought was very muddled. I'm a collector. I collect Hot Toys, and that is my grail piece. If I ever got that piece, it's literally like $1,200. And you can put an Iron Man in it. It is by far the coolest and biggest thing you will ever see. And just the detail. In fact, it's one of my favorite pieces that I've drawn. Was a Hulkbuster. Was a scene of the Hulkbuster. But I love that thing, and I think that is probably my favorite suit of all with Iron Man.
I love how his suit fits in it too. Go ahead, Flo.
Yes.
No, because I'm reading like nobody's baby saying that like I don't think Stark should have a machine that goes toe to toe with the Green Machine. Honestly, I don't agree with that. I think from what we've seen from Tony period, like is that he thinks ahead of everybody. Like everybody's playing checkers and Tony plays chess. Right. So he's thinking like 5 to 10 to 15 steps ahead. And he didn't just create this suit just to create it. He created it with Banner because they knew
it was Banner's idea.
That they knew that they need something just in case that a Hulk just went out of control. And something like magic can easily affect a Hulk, like we saw Scarlet Witch do. Well, Wanda, because she's Wanda at this time. We see Wanda do, and if they didn't have this suit, what would they have done? Like he was just, and mind you, it still took a lot to even take him down in a suit that was created by the creator himself, Banner. Like, you know, like they had his thoughts and ideas in it. So it still took a lot to, there isn't an if nobody, Banner helped him create it.
Yeah.
There's not an if.
No, yeah, he says it. He's like, we created it together. So we've got about 15 minutes for this film because we are short on time, which bothers me on this week, but it's okay. Yeah. Technical difficulties, we're going to roll with them. So for me, that is a very good point. My love, my wife is in the chat. I love it. And she says, Tony thought ahead just like Batman does for Superman. And that's exactly right. He did think ahead. Batman, in this case, Batman, Superman, and Iron Man, Hulk is there's a good cross section of reality there, or realities. Talking about Tony and talking about his approach to things in Ultron, I think is going to be necessary here. And I know that you guys are going to make the argument that he didn't fully make Ultron, and that's fine. I totally understand that. He didn't finish the job. He did, though, start the job. And there's a couple of scenes, I really should have written these down because there's a couple quotes from Ultron that really stuck out to me about him basically blowing off the whole team to basically go, yeah, this needed to happen regardless of what the hell you guys think. And even Banner calls him out on it, and he turns to Banner and goes, no, dude, you're wrong. And I don't remember the exact quote, and I want to go back and get it because I really think you guys should hear it. Like I said, I should have done my homework and written it down. But there's a moment where I turned to myself and I went, wow, Tony literally thinks that because it's his idea, it's the right idea. And Banner goes along with it, so I agree he shouldn't have. He should be just as much to blame for Ultron as Tony is. But Banner is a bit of a pushover when he's in Banner form. So I think Tony walks all over Banner. Personally, that's just the way their relationship is from what I can see. They're friends, but he still doesn't have the clout in the friendship. I think Tony starts to turn to an anti-villain in this movie. He turns to an anti-villain, and he solidifies that in the Civil War role that he takes on. That is where I'm going to start my argument.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah. Do you blame the Hulk for what he did in Johannesburg?
No, because he was mind controlled by the Scarlet Witch. But once he calmed down, he didn't destroy things. So once Tony calmed down from his little encounter with her, he should have realized that he either had a profound experience and saw that, and it wasn't just like him in a dream, or he should have taken a step back and included the team, because that's what he should have done from day one, and he didn't. He made a big error.
Can I just add something?
Sure, please.
Okay, because I'm thinking about what you said previously about why the Hulk went off world. Right? You talked about all these things that led up to him leaving, all this trauma, correct? Mm-hmm. That led up to him being like, you know what, I can no longer be on this earth. I need to figure out a way to get out of here. To me, it's the same thing with Tony. Just because Iron Man 3 ended and he was like, let's blow up all the suits, that doesn't mean that his mental health is back at being like 100% not fractured. Add on to that, the vision that he saw from Scarlet Witch informed more of what he already feared. And even after he calmed down, and even after Banner calmed down, Banner still left. So it still makes sense that even after Tony calmed down, these thoughts and ideas that's in his head, he felt as though he still needed those to become like true, and still needed to like figure out a way to protect everyone. His greatest fear was just a thought, and then somebody made reality. So if you can't blame Banner for what he did under influence, and still, even after he was influenced, he left a team that essentially needed him, how can you blame Tony for the exact same thing?
So if you look at what happened with Scarlet Witch on him, of course, that was what the driving force that caused him to let's just say this, rekindle their work on Ultron. This had already been something that Tony and Banner were both working on pre having the scepter. And so the scepter gave her mind control, gave him the idea that, you know, this is the next step, this is the next possibility. And of course, we know the mind stone finished it. Tony had this point where he realized it wasn't working. He let the thing run scenarios, and then he went off to the party. I wonder if he would have just stopped at that point, realizing it wouldn't have worked. But the Mind Stone was what did finish the job when they were away. You have Tony. Yes, he's going about things the wrong way. But let me ask you: does every hero always make the right choice? To give somebody the ability as a hero that they always make the right choice, that they don't make mistakes ever, that they're never at fault for anything. You know, we can't hold people to that. That's like saying, okay, well, you know, if these guys have super abilities or super suits or whatever, then they're always going to make the right choices. We have to put our complete confidence in them. And we find that in Civil War, there is a growing resentment for all the heroes because of stuff that's going on. And it wasn't just what Tony did with Ultron. It also ends up with, like, you know, the small town in New Mexico that got bombarded by a grudge match from space. You have, you know, the Tony wasn't a part of, with the exception of helping with the repulsor technology. He wasn't there for Project Insight. That was Steve Rogers. They don't always make the best decisions. Was it smart to blow up a bunch of helicarriers over the nation's capital? Probably not. You know, did they consider the collateral damage? Definitely not.
They didn't have a choice, at least with New York. They didn't have a choice. That was reactionary.
Right. And so you have Tony, who, again, just like the Hulk was thinking everything was evil, Tony is driven to try to make Ultron. Bruce is right there with him. Now, Bruce was not mind controlled at this point, and he definitely is a pushover, but he went along with it. And so they, you know, Ultron was created, you know, Tony did make mistakes, but does every hero not? That's just what I'm asking.
I do believe every hero can make a mistake. That's not what I think makes you a hero. I think the nobility is what I keep attaching myself when it comes to Iron Man and hero. I think Cap, even, and if we want to talk about heroic acts, and even what Ultron says about them being killers and how they're all killers, which is true. And if you watch, they all kill people throughout the whole MCU up to this point. We've watched every one of them murder somebody. Whether they're a good guy or bad guy, we can get into it. But the interesting thing, I think I just lost it. There it went. It just slipped away because I looked over at what Black Girl Mama was saying in the chat.
I'm sorry.
No, that's my fault. I shouldn't have. I've been interested in that conversation as well. Yep, it's gone. It's gone. Go ahead.
I mean, I essentially agree with Marvelite. Shocker, I know. But I feel like, because I mean, we're going to go to Civil War, and people can make, and I will probably make this argument, the fact that I feel like Cap was wrong, because I feel like both were wrong. I feel like nobody won in that scenario. I feel like both were wrong. But a lot of people like to say Tony was wrong, and nobody says how wrong Cap was. Cap, you've been off the ice for all these years, and I get it. This has been your best friend, but you made a choice without talking to everyone else. And they all have moments where they make a choice without consulting everyone else.
You're going to have to go further into this, because I don't think I agree with you on this.
We and that's fine. But I feel like Tony made a choice. And sometimes you have to make a choice, whether people agree with it or not. Banner said he didn't want to become the Hulk anymore. He wanted to leave. And Black Widow took that choice away from him by pushing him and making him become the other guy. You can't label her a villain, or you can't label her as an anti-hero, because she did what she felt was necessary for the team to win, which is essentially what Tony did when he was trying to create something that could protect them once everybody is long gone and dead.
Yeah, I see the point, but he was trying to end the team. He even says that he doesn't want to help the team. He wants to end the team, go home. That's the whole point of the fight, right? So is to win the fight and go home. That's what he says. There's a moment between Tony and Nick Fury where he literally gets told by Fury, because Tony's like, I didn't know what else to do. We have Thanos level bad guys coming. He doesn't mention Thanos, but he's saying this kind of level of bad guy coming. What am I supposed to do? I got to fight the war. And Fury turns to him and goes, dude, you think after all these years you invented war? You think that you are responsible for dealing with war on the human? Come on, dude. That's hubris beyond hubris. You need to play with AI because you felt like you alone could solve war. I mean, that is hubris to the nth degree. Like,
but it can't be hubris when everyone on the team looks to him for what they need. Everyone on the team looks to him for the newest, whatever they need to fix anything by. They always look to him. To have that much pressure on your shoulders, you always feel like you need to create the next best thing, the thing that will save everybody, or the thing that will, fix everything, because everybody looks to him to fix everything. Think about in the beginning of the movie, they couldn't get into the building, because it was being shielded. They're like, Tony, what can you do? Avengers, they were about to sink in that helicopter. Tony, what can you do? Everybody looks to Tony. So when you give him the responsibility of being the one that fixes everything, and then now you're like, stop trying to fix everything, that doesn't compute with somebody who
I agree.
Always been.
I agree with you. Like, I agree, but that still means he's not a hero. He's an engineer who reacts to everything. Like he's just a dude who has a ton of money. If he didn't have the money, he'd probably just be a regular person who did some good things and some bad things. That's kind of my point about his character. If you take the money and the tech away from him and just make him like, Spider-Man, I don't think he's going to have that hero level that Spider-Man has, where he's doing it for the right reasons, for the right reasons. A hero is doing it for good and for the right reasons. Like they're not swayed and taken over to the evil side. And that happens to Tony Stark, especially in Civil War. He listens to Ross, of all people. Ross is the antagonist on the military and government side in the Marvel universe, in the MCU. He's not a good person. Anybody who listens to Ross is not paying attention to reality.
I feel like perception is key, right? What you perceive is something somebody else won't perceive as. But I feel like in Civil War, they're both wrong. What they should have done was stuck together to figure out a better solution. Cap just can't be like, no, we need to do this all on our own. No, you do need to be governed in some way. It might not have to be by the government, but we need to figure out something, because we're destroying Earth. Tony is the only person that created something to clean up the aftermath of all this stuff. We need to be governed in some way, because if we're not governed in some way, we're just like Thanos and his people doing whatever we want, how we want, when we please. There has to be something. I might not agree 100% with Ross because of how he does things, but there needed to be a middle. It couldn't just be Cap's side or Tony's side. It had to be like a middle of what they both wanted, because they both are wrong in my book.
See, I think Cap was 100% right. 100% right in Civil War. He did 100% everything right. And I literally just watched it today, so it's like really fresh in my mind, but that doesn't validate anything, obviously, but it definitely is something that's really, really on my mind. And it is 8:30, so we could easily move from just giving what we could do is we could give our opinion on Age of Ultron. I still want to hear Tony, I can tell, has something to say. But we could give our opinion on Age of Ultron, and then we can move into Civil War kind of naturally, just give a quick, rate and move. That way Tony can say what he's going to say, and we can end the show on time. Tony, let's hear it. What do you got to say?
I'm just going to say this. If Tony did not have the money or the technology, he would have still had the technology and money, because one of the things with Tony is he has a hyper intelligence. He's able to do, and he proved himself in Iron Man 3 that he can do anything with whatever he can get his hands on. I think that's important to understand. He may not have been immediately a hero, or he may not have been in the place that he would have been put in a situation, but I don't think it would have been out of the realm of possibility that he would have built himself up without his daddy's money to be what he was and to do what he did. And we would have still had Tony doing something. I mean, we're about to come into Armor Wars, and hopefully at some point we're going to get Riri Williams, and she's just a kid, either going into or coming out or in college, that's going to make her own tech. So it's not impossible. You have Peter Parker, who, he had spider abilities, but before he had spider abilities, he had the intelligence that once he did have those abilities, he was able to make some pretty good webbing and web shooters, and to do things to be able to handle his overstimulation. So, he didn't have to have the money to be able to do what he did and become what he was. But at the same time, Tony was able to learn from his mistake. Yes, he messed up with Ultron, but he got it right with Vision. And he was able to see that he could undo what he did. And if it wouldn't have been for the fact that he was able to learn from his mistake and do something different, we wouldn't have had Vision, because Vision was crucial in burning out Ultron at the end of the movie.
Agreed, but I would say Thor was the reason that Vision was created. If Tony and Banner had finished it their way, we wouldn't have gotten the Vision we got.
Well, no, Thor was crucial because Vision would have failed because Quicksilver pulled the power. Right.
He pulled the power.
Vision was dying. Thor gave it the kickstart to bring him back to life. The work had already been done. So they had already ported Jarvis into the system. And I think that was the thing. I think Tony's biggest mistake in this film was trying to create Ultron. What he needed to do was he needed to animate Jarvis. That's what he needed to do. But thankfully we didn't get that, because then we wouldn't have had Vision, because Vision needed to have the be what he was, and of course he was able to power the Mind Stone and use the Mind Stone in a way that was more appropriate.
I think we have an odd but important question in the chat. You want to tackle that one, Tony?
Says Tony isn't making weapons anymore. Do you think he's just doing defense contracts for Shield? Or is he just sitting comfy in the free? So he was sitting free energy. He was also the cleanup. He was also working with damage control and helping to undo and to deal with these things. We also know that because he was funding the Avengers for them to be able to handle super level threats, he had funds for recovery from the events. The Sokovia, we don't hear a lot about the refugees from Sokovia, but we know from the Johannesburg event, he had funds set aside specifically for dealing with the aftermath, because he knew there would be collateral damage.
Not only that, but he also was in charge of all the cleanup for New York. That's where we get Vulture, because his money was tied up in there, and Stark was taking all that stuff as well.
Right. And he was trying to do a government oversight, because what happens when you have a group of people that, I think the whole idea was the government should not have quickly jumped into finding people to deal with it. They should have found some way to mediate the damage, because when you give third-party individuals the alien technology, some of it's going to get left behind and taken. So But yeah.
So what do you guys rate this film? You and your 12-year-old counterpart.
8 and 10.
Ooh, that's a fast rating. 8 and 10. All right.
Yes.
How about you, Lala?
I think 12-year-old 8, me 9.
Okay, so high ratings. I'm gonna go 8-8. I want to give it a 9 because of the Hulkbuster scene, but I still felt like at the end I was like, it could have gone on for another hour. That's just how I felt at the end of the movie, and I would have enjoyed it. And I love what they did with Ultron. Everybody, a lot of people were like, oh, I don't. I was like, no, he had personality compared to in the comics. In the comics, he's just, I am Ultron. You know, he's very HAL 9000 in the comics, which is fine.
Right.
But I love that they gave him this like human James Spader personality.
Spader's magic.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't like the moving lips. I'll be honest. I would have preferred. I don't know. I would have preferred to have a solid robot face, but that was
or
just
like
me.
the red that turns on and off, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah, that would have been interesting. So yes, moving into Civil War, I would argue that this movie was my biggest disappointment, and I'm going to be very honest about the fact that my bias coming in from an unnerfed Marvel 616 comic universe, reading Civil War is one of my favorite comic books from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I was expecting a little more. Just a little more, just a smidge more than what they gave us. And don't get me wrong. Now, as I watch the film, I think it's a solid espionage film. There's a great, playing two sides against each other. I really like Zemo's part. I think that it's a solid flick. But when you're walking in expecting what you see in the Civil War comic, even if it was like a tenth of that, you would be like, holy crap. But this movie gave us like 100th of it. I actually used to joke and call this Captain America Civil Skirmish. Captain America Civil Skirmish, because it's not a war. They literally joke about how they pull each other's punches in the film. Like that bugged me. I and the only injury we really get is very minimal. So like the idea that it was called Civil War bugged me, but overall I think it's a fun film. That's my general take on the film. How about you guys?
Lalo.
I don't know the comic, so I went in trying to see what the war part was going to be about. I get that it was about the team pretty much being imploded from the inside out. I enjoyed Civil War. I don't think it should have been a Captain America movie, but I think he could have had his own movie. This could have been like Avengers Civil War or something like that. Like it could just been like something else. But overall, this movie drugged me through a lot of emotions. It had really like funny parts. It had sad parts. I will always not like the gang up on Tony. As much as I love Cap is my favorite Avenger. I lost a little respect for him. Like I understand he was fighting for his friend, but your friend still murdered a whole bunch of people, regardless if he was, brainwashed or not. Some things you just gotta take account for. If we're gonna be honest, it's to me it's just like Philip Frost from Flash. Sometimes you just gotta take your lumps. You did some stuff, not in the best of mind, and now you're better. But again, in this iteration of Civil War, I feel like nobody was right. The only person to me that was right in this whole film was Black Panther. Other than that, nobody else was right.
I like that approach. That makes sense. What do you got, Tony?
I hate doing this because, and I know you don't like Big Bang Theory, so I'm gonna reference a scene movie.
Who doesn't like Big Bang Theory?
Oh, I thought you didn't like Big Bang Theory.
Oh, dude, I've watched all 12 seasons many times.
All right,
I love Big Bang
Theory.
So
I'm gonna Amy Farrah Fowler the Raiders of the Lost Ark for Civil War. So basically, think about this. We have two opposing opinions. You have Iron Man, who is the idea that they've done enough damage. He's compelled by emotion, and so he feels like there needs to be oversight. And he's immediately willing to sign the Sokovia Accords. You have Captain America, who thinks that the Avengers need to be in control. Here's my opinion. First of all, with that is the Avengers should have been working with the nations of the world. Before this, they should have been communicating. They should have had a liaison to allow themselves into places like Lagos so that they could have had some type of ability to deal with things. And so that was on all of their fault. Specifically Rogers, because he was leading the group at that point, and Natasha Romanoff should have given him guidance on doing those things because he's more of a soldier. She's more of the one that's dealt with clandestine type stuff. They should never be going into countries without working with the governments. But with that said, um, if you take what Steve Rogers out of the film, there would have been really no major consequence. It would have still ended the way it did, with the exception of maybe where some of the characters ended up. So basically, you have Zemo, who has killed the guy. First of all, he kills Black Panthers. Spoiler alerts. He kills T'Chaka. He kills a bunch of people. He then activates the Winter Soldier programming in Bucky, and Bucky gets loose. His whole purpose is because he knows that Steve will do anything he can to help figure out what's going on and bring Zemo to justice, when Zemo was just going to go to Russia and kill all of the super soldiers. There was no threat of a super soldier army coming out. He didn't know that, but if Steve would not have ended up going after Zemo, the super soldier still would have been dead, and they would have immediately figured out at some point that Bucky was not involved in the bombing in with the UN building, because they would have found the other guy, was killed.
But they might have caught Bucky before that.
They might have caught Bucky before that, but I also feel like Steve put in a situation where he should have brought his friend to justice so that they didn't kill him. He said, "Listen, I know."
He literally said he wanted to do that.
I'll vouch for you.
He literally asked for that permission in the film. He literally says, "Let me bring him in," and Tony's like, "No." Tony and Ross both tell him, "No, don't do it. You can't do it." They all tell him no. As soon as Bucky gets blamed for the bombing in Lagos, they all basically go to Cap and are like, "Leave it alone. We know it's your friend, but leave it alone." And it's like, dude, at least let me get involved and see what's going on. And he goes and finds out that it's not Bucky. He immediately finds out by asking Bucky, and Bucky tells him, and they find out pretty quickly that it's not Bucky. It doesn't take very long for them to figure it out. And in the beginning, his motivation is literally just to bring Bucky in. That's his original motivation, if you watch closely.
But that motivation changed after he didn't do it. That motivation changed. He still could have brought him in after having a conversation, even if they told him no. Right? He's supposed to be the one. Captain's supposed to be the one that's above everybody else, the one that has the greatest moral standing, the moral character, right? But I get it. This was his transition into like his nomad phase. And I understand that. But still, like, if you wanted to bring him in and they told you no, and then you still went to him anyway, and he was like, "Yo, I didn't do it. This is what happened, blah, blah, blah." You should have been like, "Okay," and still brought him in. But no, you helped him evade not only the authorities, but like essentially your authority, your team. And you chose a side. He drew a clear line and he chose a side.
Well, he chose a side to so I think there's two things that happen in the film. It's two very distinct things. He chose a side for the Sokovia Accords, and then he chose a side with his friend Bucky. He already knew Bucky saved him at the end of Winter Soldier, and of course we didn't watch that for the series, so there's a bit of that kind of lost here. But at the end of Winter Soldier, Bucky literally saves Captain America's life with no reason. There's no reason to think the Winter Soldier should do that or would do that. So we all understand there's a little bit of Bucky left inside of him. Mm-hmm. With that being said, Cap takes that information and that hope and goes out of his way to try to make sure that his friend is given a clear day in court. And I don't think it's going to happen that way if you watch things go down with the Sokovia Accords popping up. Sokovia Accords essentially meant that he wasn't allowed to do anything without somebody's permission, which means even if he wanted to go after him and follow the law, he would have to give up what he was going to do, which was protect his friend, in order to follow the law. So, and it's interesting because if you listen to Sharon Carter during the eulogy for Peggy, she gives the most, one of the most famous Captain America quotes in the comic books, but it's done by her in the movies, which is great because they got it in there. But he talks about how very clearly, if somebody says, starts doing things that are wrong, even if it seems to be right, like the Sokovia Accords, it is your job to plant yourself like a tree and say, "No, you move. I'm not getting out of the way." And Cap takes that and runs with it in this film. I didn't like this movie as much until this time. I weirdly went from being middle, like standing between Iron Man and Captain America, going, "Yeah, I like both characters both a lot." I'm a Captain America fan, and I don't know if I like Tony Stark anymore. This movie today changed my mind. Today. Is that weird?
No,
sure.
Anyway,
no,
I'm just
I
getting
don't know.
passionate about it. I'm enjoying it. Go ahead.
no.
I
But
just
like,
feel like
go ahead.
everybody was wrong.
Well, yeah, I think that's a big thing. I think Tony's big failure in this was how he was handling Scarlet Witch. I think that was where Steve went far beyond. Like they needed to understand, like she was not at fault. She was doing the best she could. There would have been just as much collateral damage on the ground if she didn't do anything as there would have been in the air
Agreed.
by killing some of the Wakandans. And again, you don't trade lives. One group is not more valuable than the other, but she tried to do something.
And she wasn't
And
looking up. She didn't look up to see that there was a building there. She saw a crowd of people and got the energy up and out of the crowd. That's all she did.
right.
I hated
And-
that
and-
part of the movie.
That's
I know.
but that's also when you have somebody that's extremely untrained, which you don't even understand their power. They don't understand their power. You really don't understand their power, and they're in the field. She did a noble thing. She essentially, like, and I know there's people on the ground, but she did that to save Cap. She did that solely to save Cap. And
I could see that.
her judgment was just off when she, instead of pushing it above herself, she pushed it towards a building, and she didn't know the ratio of that explosion. Also, if she knew her powers more, she probably could have contained it on the ground.
Or just
Nobody would have been hurt.
squished it into nothing. No, and I didn't think about this, but you and Nobody's Baby are completely right. She was too green, and that was a bad mistake on Cap's part and Black Widow's part and Sam's part. Sam is probably the most seasoned military person on the team, and he should have known better. Sorry.
Then to bring her, she was just too great, and I agree with that. She wasn't ready to be on the field, and then to break her out when the world was essentially against her. Like, she turned into the Hulk in this movie. Like, nobody wanted to see her. People were afraid of her. Essentially, and not eventually we see why. But
Right.
Tony tried to protect her, and again, without anybody else's authority, which is what a lot of these Avengers do, they took it upon themselves to break her out, cause a slight wedge between her and Vision, and so that she can fight within this weird back and forth that they had, where they should have all been together to figure out a better way of doing things.
They should have all listened to Cap. They should have all listened to Cap. It would have solved the problem.
No, they all should have listened to each other to come to a better conclusion, because not one person in this movie is correct to me. Tony is wrong and Cap is wrong. The only person that's right is Black Panther, because he figures out what Zemo does, and it was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop because I'm slowly turning into you, and I won't let that happen.
I know people are going to say, sorry, go ahead.
Only right up to the point where he didn't kill Zemo. That was honestly, like, he was even there. And I have to say, like he wasn't in the best mindset. It was like, I'll go do this myself. And he's like, I'm going to kill this guy. And it was like, the whole idea of, we need to bring, this stuff to justice. And he wasn't even willing to listen to the fact. There's that one exchange in the airport battle where Bucky's like, I didn't kill your father. And he's like, then why did you run? And you're looking at all these superpowered individuals like going after him. Everybody is coming at him with guns. They've all got shoot to kill orders. Why wouldn't he have run?
Right. And he's already the Winter Soldier, and they've been chasing him all over the world already. Why wouldn't he continue to run? He's still a wanted person.
So, why wouldn't he just turn himself in?
No, you're not going to turn yourself into to the government that just turned out to be Hydra that you were working for. Like, no, I don't see him trusting an entity except Captain America. That's the only person that Bucky Barnes is going to trust.
Let's face it, and like any law enforcement entity, like, there are good people, but some people just don't know how to handle things appropriately, and a lot of those guys probably have twitchy trigger fingers.
But also, why didn't he just when Cap came to him, he was like, he didn't say, what can we do? He was pretty much like, you can't stop me, bro. Like, I'm out. Like Bucky, there was nothing like, even in his like a Bucky state and not his Winter Soldier state, there was nothing in him that was like, let me what can I do? All he could think about was running, and running is never the answer.
No, but if you're
Right? Like
if you're brainwashed and just coming out of it because of getting punched in the head, I don't know. I think that you might consider running the only option you have. I don't know. Bucky, especially with what they do at the end, they literally put him on ice until they can figure out what's going on with him.
get it, but then that's when he opened his mouth and actually said something and was like, I need to be like put down for a second. Throughout the whole movie, he didn't say anything like that. He ran. And it wasn't until him and Cap damn near killed Tony Stark that he was like, well, maybe I should, and got his arm blew off. He was like, maybe I should, calm down for a while before I get this kill order out of my head. Like this could have, and I get it, it's a movie and you needed this build up to get to where we are now. But nowhere in the movie, once he's unbrainwashed, is Bucky like, yo, I need to talk to somebody or something needs to be done. All he's doing is running. And Cap is wrong for protecting him. He's wrong. Solidly wrong.
I disagree.
And Tony's wrong too.
I disagree, but that's
And
okay. That's okay. That's okay. We got 10 minutes to wrap up a discussion that should probably be 4 hours long. And next week, I'm going to make sure that everything's on point so that we have full 2 hours, because next week's going to be the heated, because that's where the crux of this debate is going to start, is Morgan's birth, but we'll get into that. So as far as Tony and Cap at the end of this film, and this is a huge spoiler. If you haven't seen Civil War, we've already pretty much spoiled most of it for you, but this is the big spoiler. So go ahead and put on your earmuffs if you gotta. Captain America knows that Winter Soldier has killed Iron Man's parents for a while. We don't even know how long he's known. They don't actually even reference that in the film. But we do know that he's known, and it's only by his own admission that we know. But I assume it's because he saw like the dossiers and things to do with the Winter Soldier, with S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that, or something. I'm imagining. So the thing that bothers me is there's this big argument about he knew since Winter Soldier, so he's known for a while. But the thing that bothers me about this is, yes, he knew, and maybe he should have told Tony, but I don't think it was wrong for him not to, considering knowing Tony Stark and the way he reacts. All he had to do was, the moment he knew Tony Stark was going to know, he looked at him. He was watching him watch the video. He was like, when's he going to snap? Because I know he's gonna. Because that's how Tony reacts to everything, with a knee-jerk reaction. He does it in every film. He never hesitates but to just immediately react. He is all emotion, very little forethought when it comes to the situation. He has forethought when it comes to like what might be. Like Ultron was trying to predict what might be in the future. Veronica, what if the Hulk, all these things. But when things happen and he has to react spontaneously, his knee-jerk reactions are usually not good. And he kicked the crap out of somebody who was not responsible for the death of his parents. You can't blame Bucky Barnes for the death of the Starks. You can't. You can blame Hydra. Silence.
Well, I was just kind of thinking through, and I get it. Yeah, Tony is very reactionary, but I think there is something about the ability to sit down and without there being any like type of like just getting in the quiet of things and having Steve, and Steve could have laid out everything that's happened to Bucky, the programming, everything, and explained to him how he was brainwashed and he was Hydra's puppet, and what happened at the end of Winter Soldier, and embrace him and say, listen, Hydra used him to kill your parents. And in that setting, Tony's not going to immediately just jump up and maybe run and go. He might get really mad. He might have like maybe built something, but like there would have been that opportunity for him to talk it through, instead of him finding out in the midst of everything else. And then I think that it wasn't so much that, I think that when they were in that cavern, if Tony found out and would have known that Cap didn't know, and they could have, I think Cap would have been able to talk him down. But the moment that Cap basically opened up and is basically, did you know this? And you see Cap looking at him like, crap, I'm caught. That's the moment when Tony's just beyond point of no return. Because not only is it that I now know who killed my family, but the guy who is becoming my best friend has completely betrayed me in the sense of hid this from me, let me, interact with this guy in the entire time, and still, even and then, defending him over letting me know the truth. Um, I think Steve is a bit wrong there. I really think that I think Steve realizes at that point that he should not have kept it from Tony. And you disagree? I can see it.
Go ahead,
okay,
Molly.
so everything that Marvelite said, a little bit of what Snitty said, because I agree that I agree that Tony is reactionary. I do agree, but he's normally reactionary when things are thrust in his face. That's when he's reactionary. It's one of those things where it's like I didn't clock this. Usually, when people are afraid of being hurt, afraid of change, or afraid of anything, they plot what's going to happen to them or how it's going to happen to them, what they can do to fix it. So if that thing does happen, they can prepare themselves for it. They already prepared for it, so they can take it a little bit more easier. Tony, there's no way Tony could have prepared for this, but Cap could have prepared him for this. We have been through like him and Tony has been through a lot together. This is a man. Captain America is a man that his father talked about growing up. There's no telling what Howard Stark told Tony about the great Steve Rogers that Tony always felt inadequate about. And then to finally meet him face to face and to see those virtues and those values truly in a person that he didn't think actually exist, and then to fight side by side, to essentially be a brother to this person, and to find out that the one thing that's been like terrorizing him his whole life, which they brought up even in a movie, the last time he talked to his parents and that they died in a car accident. And if you know Tony, you know that his brain was moving, that he probably didn't believe that it was just a car accident. And to find that the person that he trusted the most knew his biggest pain and didn't tell him and was protecting someone that up until, well, not up until this point, but for a nice chunk of the time that they were together, he thought was dead, I would be reactionary as well.
I'm not saying
because that's too much for.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do
person
it.
to take
No, I agree.
time.
I agree. I'm not saying I wouldn't do what Tony did. That's not the argument. I'm definitely going to separate myself out from. So basically, what I'm saying is, I'm not a hero. I'm not claiming that I would be a hero, and I'm not claiming that most people, 99% of people, would have had that exact reaction. What I'm saying is, if you roll reversal their entire lives and you put Captain America's person, his soul, his spirit inside Tony's body, and reverse those two things, and put Cap in that same situation, he's not going to attack. That's the difference. A hero.
Then they're
A
not the
hero
same
can take a
person,
second. I know, and I know they're not. But what I'm saying is, Tony's a regular
But if you-
person, thrown into extraordinary situations, reacting to them. And yes, he has some heroic qualities, but I don't think he's a hero. I think he's a good man that's trying to make up for bad problems. Captain America was a hero from birth. It's in his nature. Sure, he's made mistakes. Should he have told Tony? Yes. But do I think that, as you guys said at the beginning, can heroes make mistakes? Yes. Yes, they're allowed
and
to.
let's face it, Steve Rogers has killed more people but for less.
He has killed a lot of people. They've all killed a lot of people. We can get into that. But I'm just saying, I just don't think that Tony, or I'm sorry, I don't think that Steve Rogers would have attacked had he seen Winter Soldier kill his parents and Tony had known about it. I know that's really convoluted, but I just don't see it happening that way.
It is because I think that if we're role reversing, then we're role reversing everything. We're role reversing that Tony now lived like Captain America lived and grew up with the ideals that Captain America grew up with, and Steve grew up the way Tony grew up with the ideals and the privilege and the life that he has. He would have reacted the same way because he wouldn't be Captain America just in Tony's body. He would be Tony in Tony's body. Like you can't.
I know it's not fair. I know it's not fair. I was just trying to. I was trying to say an ideal. I don't know. I'm sorry.
I have one last statement, and this is kind of this might throw you guys for a loop. So with Captain America: Civil War, those last few moments, and I'm not justifying everything up to this point, but those last few moments when Tony did what he did, he was the villain at that point. There's no question about it. when he decided, and that's the difference between what the heroes do and what the villains do. The heroes have to separate themselves from what's going on, and they have to make hard decisions. Tony, up to this point, had always been making hard decisions. They were not, let's say, the noblest in the sense of like a superhero, but at the end of Civil War, when he decides to try to kill Bucky and fight Captain America, Zemo's whole purpose was to make the Avengers destroy themselves,
Yes.
and the best way was to make one of them the villain. And he knew that that
Mhm.
was what could destroy Tony. Now, after that moment, when Captain America disables him, Tony then realizes what happened, and you see the change back to what he needed to do. He had a moment, and again, Captain prevented him from going too far. He disabled him to stop him from killing either one of them, but at the same time, Tony was able to turn around and see the difference. He kept that cell phone. He was angry at Cap still, but he never threw the cell phone away. And so when we get to
No,
Infinity
but
War,
would you throw away that good connection for a weapon? Forget about how you feel. Think of him as like a drug dealer hookup. Would you really throw that number away in case you needed it? Would you really? Does it
A
really
reach
mean?
because
I don't know.
when you're
he's a
angry and you're at no point, you would throw it away.
yeah, because that's a reach though. Because if he's
Despite
a
yourself.
reactionary person and he's still kind of feeling some way about it, the Tony that you are speaking of would toss the phone.
That's fair.
But
No,
the
I have
Tony
to.
that Light is speaking of wouldn't toss the phone.
I do have to agree with Marvelite, and it's something I thought about exactly at the end of the film, and I didn't get a chance to say it, so I'm glad you brought it up. But the fact that Tony doesn't, because Zemo literally tells them, "I want you guys to tear each other apart," ha ha ha. Like he reveals that to them. He doesn't do it in all those words, but he still makes it pretty clear that's his goal. And when they start tearing each other apart, or when they see the video, that alone should show them that he put that there just to get them riled up. And Cap knew that. You could see in his face. You can see him processing it. Tony was just reaction. He was not thinking about what Zemo's purpose was, which makes Tony the anti-villain. He's still trying to do the right thing. He's still trying to take out the Winter Soldier, which ultimately is probably good for the world. I don't disagree, but I do think it's interesting that he does become the anti-villain, and then we're supposed to go from this arc of Tony being an anti-villain to him being the world's #1 hero.
Well, I would even call him number one hero.
I mean, number one hero. But I feel like you are taking a person and putting him against gods and then being like, why aren't you these gods? Because he's not. He's a person. He's way more flawed than Steve Rogers. Right? And he's way more flawed than Steve Rogers. And if you think about it, he's kind of had more life to live to be more flawed, which is why what we're seeing in Steve Rogers now is him becoming flawed because he's alive longer now to become flawed in this world. Like Steve went from being like this little guy that wanted to be in the military to being in the military, giving his life up in the military, getting thawed, continued in some type of military. Like this is all the life that he knows. Whereas Tony has led a way more different life than most of the people that he's like teamed up against. For the most part, what's her name? Natasha and Hawkeye and Falcon are all soldiers. They are all soldiers. They all take orders. They all listen, and they all go like they all are company men and women. Tony is not a company man or woman. He has always relied on himself to fix a problem, and that's hard. The older you get, it's harder to change your core being. And from Iron Man to this point, he has changed a great deal. But sometimes, depending on circumstances, depending on what can ruffle your feathers, you will revert back to a certain type or a certain age when people hit a certain trigger. And they already showed us that his parents, their death is a trigger for him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say he was a bit of a villain in this movie in those last minutes. Because at the end of that, for me, he was a child trying to avenge his parents, regardless if Bucky was brainwashed or not. This has been something that's been hovering over him since they died. And I get it; it was knee jerk, it was reactionary, but also something that could have been prevented. I feel like if Cap would have told him. A lot of theories are saying that Cap couldn't pick up the hammer because he kept his secret, and once he released that secret, then he could pick up the hammer.
I was going to make that argument too. There's actually the moment where Ultron, specifically in Age of Ultron, says you're all killers, and Cap can't pick up the hammer in the scene right before that because he's still dealing with just being not the perfect hero. He doesn't become the perfect hero until he finally lets everything go and just fights the right reasons. I'll agree to all that. I think that's interesting. I think it'd be fun to do a character study of Captain America, but I think it would be a lot of us agreeing on all of this except for the Civil War stuff.
You're like, we can't agree. We have to.
We have to find something to argue about. But here, I'm going to present this question as a way to finalize tonight's show before we do our ratings of this movie, and then we're going to go ahead and end because it is a little after 9 here. Sorry, I heard a beeping. I wasn't sure what it's from. So here's the question. If you were to take Tony Stark at 21 years old when we see him and his parents before they die, and you were to give him the super soldier serum, would he be Captain America or Red Skull?
So you picked a point in time where he's at his
No, it doesn't have to
lowest.
matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to matter. You pick any time in his life. You pick when he's 2 years old. You pick when he's the moment he's picking up the stones and changing them, right? I don't care. I don't care when you pick his time. My question is, since we know the super soldier serum is designed basically in a way to enhance what a human is, if you're a good person, you're better. If you're bad, you're worse. That's exactly what the scientist says. So if that's the case, what kind of super soldier would Tony Stark be?
I don't know why your question broke me. But for whatever reason, I can't answer it properly because the only answer I can think in my head right now is Booster Gold.
That's hilarious.
like that's all I can think of right now. Like that would be who he would be if he's Booster Gold.
That's a great answer.
That's all I'm sorry, Lala, go ahead.
I don't think he would be Steve Rogers or Red Skull because Steve Rogers is the epitome of good, whereas Red Skull is the epitome of evil, and Tony Stark is a gray area. He is a gray area. He has good intentions, but sometimes they can be done wrong. So if anything, if he took the serum, I think he would be something new that they've never seen before. I can't say he would be one or the other.
Oh, did you finish Falcon and the Winter Soldier? No, you still haven't finished it? No, I haven't finished it. See, I think that has a relevancy to my question. What do you think, Tony? What do you think? It goes much further into the super soldier serum and what it means and how it works. And I think that it really explores that aspect of the MCU world a little more.
Okay, so if we're talking about Erskine formula, that one like magnified. Yeah, okay, yeah, I would probably say maybe more John Walker than, let's say, Cap, and a lot less Red Skull, because John Walker had that overconfidence and everything else. I think yes, I think that watching Falcon and Winter Soldier, that would definitely give you I could see Tony being more like that.
I encourage you to watch it, and I don't know if it should be. I think you're right. I think it's close. It's really what I was thinking when I brought the question up, and I hadn't remembered that you hadn't seen it, Lala. I knew you were starting it, but hadn't finished it.
I know all about John Walker, though. So
okay.
But I will say this: John Walker does make the decision to step down and back up at some point. So, and then they do something. Well,
we can debate that, but.
But you know what I mean? Like he makes the right choice at one point. He struggles and then makes a good decision.
That's a fair point.
And heroic moment.
Yeah. But I also feel like depending on what time you decide to give this to him, he would probably be more on the. I would say I'm gonna use it as a scale. I would say he'll be more depending on when you decide to give it to him. He will be more on the Cap side than he will be on the Red Skull side. And if you putting John Walker in the middle of those two, then somewhere between Steve Rogers and John Walker, and not on the besides John Walker and Red Skull.
That's fair, but I wouldn't even put John Walker smack between Red Skull and Captain America. I'd put him like 3/4. So that's just me.
But
I'm just saying, like, we're trying to do a list scale.
But if you also think about Bucky was a ladies' man before the serum, and he was a very confident, strong individual, and yet the serum did well. What they did to him did not make him. It was the programming that made him bad. So I mean, there is a possibility that Tony, at a younger, more, he probably wouldn't have used his powers properly because he wouldn't have had the responsibility. But I also think his dad would have gotten a hold of him and would have made sure he got the training that he needed.
I like it. We should probably finish up the show, considering it's 10 after 9, and we said we were going to go to 9 for Lala. And Bats also wants me to jump off of here and go, be a parent. So with that being said, you can say scumbag. It's okay to say you can say scumbag. There we go. The chat wouldn't let him say scumbag. So yes, you can. With that being said, we will be finalizing the week 3 of the Great Tony debate on whether or not Tony Stark is a hero or not, and we will be finalizing with the last 3 Tony Stark MCU films, which include the little bit of cameos in Spider-Man: Homecoming, which we'll watch and review, and as well as both Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. So please do watch those for next week if you're wanting to be a part of the show and chat along with us. With some fresh perspective. I'll be taking notes. So that being said, you guys have been awesome tonight. This has been a great debate. I've really enjoyed it.
Same.
Absolutely.
Are we going to rate this or no?
We are. Oh, no, Jokers. Oh. That sucks. I'm sorry. Why don't Tony, you go first?
Honestly, with the frustration, take aside the fact that the comic books and the movie was vastly different. That's the same thing for Age of Ultron. I think Age of Ultron kind of prepared me for the fact that Civil War was not going to be Civil War. I would still give it a solid 8. As a kid, just seeing all the Avengers and then bringing Spider-Man in, it would 12-year-old I would say 10.
All right. I'll let Lala finish. I'll let you do the final. I like let you have the final word. So I didn't like this movie to start. I think older me would have will give it a higher rating. I'd probably give it a 7. Just because there are some great moments, some political drama, like I said, but my disappointment still rides along, and I still call it civil skirmish in my head. But I think 12-year-old me would have been like, dude, Giant Man and Ant-Man and Vision and all these fights. And, oh, look at Spider-Man. He actually stopped Winter Soldier's hand midair. He's so strong. Yeah, I would have given it a 10.5 at 12.
And he actually acted like Spider-Man in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, Cat brought a child. He should have brought a child. So, it's all fair game, I guess. For me, I think myself, and my 12-year-old self will say a solid 8. I think both would say a solid 8. Because, like I said, I think Civil War is a perfect title because war is not just like guns blazing. You can have an internal war, and this was more internal and group-based of a war, like within, like a war within than anything else. But both 8.
I like it. So we all give it some pretty high ratings, but strangely, I give it the lowest.
That's not strange.
I guess that's not strange. I am the biggest cynic on the Marvel side of things here. So that being said, we are going to go ahead and raid somebody because why not? It's always fun. Let's see who's on and do a quick raid. And if you'll stick around for the raid, y'all, that would be awesome. If not, I do understand people have lives, things to do. Oh, Goose is on. Let's raid Goose. Let's make sure he's still on. Goose is one of our buddies from the Discord and from Twitch. He's very cool. You guys should follow him if you do not. And again, if you do not follow Lala and Marvel, or Tony Marvelite and Lala Black Girl Marvel, both on TikTok, here on Twitch, Instagram, you name it, they're likely on it. Please do follow them. Of course, I don't normally plug myself, but you can follow me too. I would love
Please
it.
follow him.
So
Absolutely.
Goose is on. We're going to go ahead and raid Goose here. And he's playing a scary game. Oh, whoa, that's a weird little doll with a bat with a hammer. Okay, this is frightening. Let's go check this out. Yes, follow Joker. Follow everyone in the chat. Bats McSkelly. Follow Captain Salty Dog. Follow Angel Taco. Angel El Taco, if you will. Okay, Goose, here we come. Goose. Oh, it's the Goose. The underscore. I hate typing. Goose 42. All right, guys. That's that. You don't get the raid?
No, I don't get any of this. Like you say,
We can sit down and talk about it at some point and explain it. So because we're going to get people over to your channel as well. So we're going to have you streaming some night, and we're going to have to come raid you, and we'll go do that somehow. All right, guys. Have a wonderful night.
All right. Bye.